words can't express the way I feel about David. He was my brother. He was my best friend. Like a lot of people, he made everybody feel like he was their best friend. And I had a lot of good experiences with him. I was asked to talk about auctions. We did a lot of auctions together. He was pretty secretive about the auctions. He didn't want to tell me when they were happening, but if I found out about it, he was okay with me there because we wouldn't bid against each other. And in fact, just recently, I told him I was going to Phoenix to an auction. He goes, I'm going too. And we met up there, spent the whole day there. And I've got a story that we were at an auction in Eagle River, and he always told me that he could outrun me. And I said, no, David, I don't think you can. So we raced back to the truck. I beat him. Well, I found out that was a mistake because a few months later, he wanted to take me fishing. So we flew out. We were flying out to go fishing across the inlet. And David says, I brought a bear gun. And I go, you did? He goes, yeah, it's a .22. He goes, I'm going to shoot you in the leg because I know you can outrun me. And, you know, David definitely did live his life. I never heard a harsh word. I mean, if somebody did him wrong, he never said anything harsh about him. He was always smiling. He was a mighty man of God, and I'm really going to miss him. And I know he's up there with my dad, a lot of people visiting with him. And, you know, the Bible says a day in heaven is like 1,000 years. So, I mean, it'll be a blink, we'll all be there. And I just miss him. Thanks.
Well, David's been a good friend of mine throughout the years, and we've had a lot of memories together, and one of them like to share some basketball experience that we and he had for his joy that he made his family part of, and that was really a relaxing part of David. So I got a couple memories here, and I'll talk through them here. Through my friendship with David, I've been blessed with special memories of him and his family at the basketball events. One memory was when David called me to head to Wasilla High School. So I stopped at the store, picked up David's favorite ice cream, Haagen-Dazs, which we enjoyed on every trip that David and I took together. David made the comment as we were standing there at halftime. He says, we're the only ones eating Haagen-Dazs ice cream. And that was something special to David. I meant that he really enjoyed his ice cream. And, you know, you really think about it, of all the times I went out on the job site, I always made sure I took it with me. And as a good friend kind of told me the other day, he said, you're the only one that get him to stop that equipment, was that ice cream, you know. So, you know, I really think back on it, and we used to put it in different equipment, and we were heading to Fairbanks the other day, and Dave said, Trapper brought the excavator in the shop. And I said, oh, working on it. He said, yeah. He says, the best part about it is when he opened up the front toolbox, there was 2 boxes that we stuffed there from the last job that David could use on, but sitting in the shop for 3-4 days, they were kind of melted down. So I guess we'll never enjoy those. But David, his ice cream is something he really enjoyed. Another special memory was a game between UAA and UAF in Anchorage. David and Stan Wick, myself, were excited about heading into the game, so we left early to stop by David's favorite place to eat, the Lucky Wishbone. We ate there often, especially after the basketball games. We knew that this game was going to be a fierce competition, but we were up for it. But when we got to UA facility, we walked up to the ticket counter, sold out. So as we were standing there, we talked about maybe we shouldn't have stopped off the Lucky Wishbone. Then someone gave Stan a ticket, to which he turned around and waved it to Dave and I and said, I have a ticket to get in with. Well, Dave and my chances were getting a little faded quickly as the gym continued to fill up with ticket holders. Then the athletic director, Steve Cobb, walked by, and I asked him how we could get into the game as there were seats not taken. I even mentioned to him that I was a longtime Booster Club member, and Steve said, we need booster people like you that support UA athletics. Well, Steve said he would come and get us after the game got started. But in the meantime, we had this little pesky police officer kept telling us to leave the area. But we couldn't leave. Stan was in the game. He was going to ride with us, so we just moved down to where Steve could see us, but he never turned around. Then David turned to me and he said, we need to get season tickets, so we're not going to miss these games anymore. And it's something we always, enjoyed and did, and from then on we had season tickets. But when the first half was over, Steve turned around in his chair and realized that he's forgotten David and I. So he immediately come rushing over and he apologized to both of us. And in turn, he led us into the game, and David and I got to watch the second half as his guests. But David has left a great legacy for his family, and one that his children can continue. Whether a basketball game or life experiences. David has taught many things, but the most important thing is to love today more than yesterday. Love will be forever, a promise that will last. So love him more than ever. Now, his time with you has passed.
Hi, my name's Carl. In the late 70s, when David Kincaid came back to Palmer from hauling equipment and supplies for the construction of the Trans-Alaska Pipeline, he began working for my father as a driver in our trucking business. Didn't take long to appreciate the young man's talents with equipment and trucks. We sent him everywhere from Dead Horse to Homer and points in between. David's good-natured personality, upbeat attitude, and uncanny skill at driving and getting the job done won him everyone's admiration and respect. David loved trucks and construction equipment. He knew how to buy them, maintain them, and use them. David knew where the sweet spot was in each piece of machinery he operated, running it at its full potential without abusing it. He also had a good eye for the finished project. He could become impatient with someone less skilled on the equipment and would wave them over and say, with a grin like this one, "Let me do this." That was David. David was calm and collected when things got wild. I remember David stopping by our shop to visit one afternoon. We had just finished changing the engine oil on our Case 1150 dozer in the shop. My father, was probably in his mid to late 70s at the time, had climbed up on the dozer and asked David how to start it. The starter button was hidden under the steering controls, so David reached over and started the dozer up. At that, my father got it in gear and proceeded to run over the tub of used oil, spreading oil all over the place, and proceeded to hit the bolt bin. The only thing keeping the dozer from going through the back wall of our shop was the oily tracks and David's quick thinking. He popped the dozer out of gear and shut it off. And then he said calmly, "Herb, maybe you should learn how to stop the dozer before you start it." If David hadn't told me what had happened, I think I would have always wondered how the bolt bin got bent and the oil tub crushed. We remained friends for 35 years. Once I asked David, what was there about trucking that he liked with such a passion? He said, "Carl, you're good with people and paperwork. I don't care to deal with either of these. Gives me a headache. Now give me a Kenworth," his favorite truck, "a load and a destination, and when I shut this door, I'm my own boss. I'm the one in charge. It's just me, the truck, the load, and the road." That was David.
I'm Brian Kincaid. I'm the youngest of the boys, the Kincaid boys, and I always argued I may have been shorter, but I was the best looking one and Mom's favorite. But we had many arguments along those lines, and some of my favorite times was we'd have breakfast on Saturdays, and then we'd go and give Grandma a hard time and argue about who was better looking, and he was always, "Well, I'm taller," and I'm going, "Well, I'm his favorite." So it was a good time. It was later on in life I got to know my brother David, and my topic's kind of snow machining because we really, he went off to the slope and I went out to the villages, and it was later on in my life that we started to reconnect, and looking back, it means so much to me. There were times when I was trying to build a subdivision that David would come through for me, and he always, that smile is just infectious, right? I mean, he would show up. There was times when I found him sitting in my driveway, and he just said, "I just came up to talk to you," and I'm like, "Wow, I got my brother back." And actually, I was the one that left. So our relationship, and we started snow machining together. And I remember he would buy those auction Alpines with the singles key, and I'm just like, "David, I can't ride with you on one of those." And finally, he ended up with a Dragon. And we had such good times up in the mountains. I know Rachel, I'm sure, was very nervous when he left the driveway, had to ride with his brother Brian. I had a bit of a reputation of perhaps pushing the envelope. And, David got hurt real bad on one of our rides. And I've never ridden so hard in my life. I called Corey. I said, "Corey, I've got some instructions for you, and I need a helicopter, and I need it here, and I need it now, and this is the last time I'm going to call you because I've got to go back." And that did change David's life. I saw a profound change in him, and I was so devastated that I kind of took it on myself. I'd hurt my brother. I'd let him out there, and our relationship really took off after that. I had wrapped him up in an emergency blanket in my sleeping bag. I carried a lot of gear, and then as I was getting ready to leave, and I went back and I said, "And if nothing else, this will keep you alive." And I pulled open the emergency bag and stuck a Bible on his heart. And I said, "Just hold on to this, and I'll be back." That ride out and back in, I fell in love with my brother. I mean, I knew that if he was dead, I'd been to the Randy Clark show, right? So I was convinced I could raise him if he did. But he was there, and we got the chopper in. And in this last week, we went riding a couple times, and it was just beautiful. It was absolutely beautiful out. And Corey and I and Clinton and Daryl would be up on the ridges doing what we do, acting like, he called them knuckleheads. He said, "I'm just going to sit down here and watch you knuckleheads," as he told me. But he would just lean back on the snow machine and put his son to the face and just smile. And he would just sit there. And I've got a picture of him like that. And it was just, he just loved being out there with us and enjoying what Alaska had to offer. And the model that he modeled out in front of me of what a man of God looks like, it was just incredible. I can't put words around it. The last time he had been trying, when he got hurt, we were trying to get to the bomber, and he really wanted to ride a snow machine to the bomber. And so finally, we had a shot at it, and Daryl and I and David got to the bomber. It's the B-29 up in Hatcher's Pass, and he just sat there. We're sitting in the sunshine, and he just kept saying, I made it to the bomber. And then a few minutes later, it's like, I made it to the bomber. A few minutes later, it was another one of those, and I just bonded with him. We did look alike. Our kids looked alike. I wish I could have spent more time with him, but I'm just so grateful. And, as been said earlier, tomorrow's promised to no one, and we just don't know. And that 2 rides and the breakfast we had that morning mean everything to me now. And at the time, I was supposed to be in Anchorage on the day we went to the bomber, and I was guilting myself about blowing that off so I could go riding with him. But that day means everything to me now. And I would just encourage everyone to slow down the pace and really seek what's real in this world. And it's God, family, and friends. And I'm just very thankful that I got the time that I did with my brother David. Thanks.
David left a mark. Thanks, guys, for your courage. Mike Hodson, IBEW, has a presentation for Rachel.
Thank you, Dennis. Rachel, want to express on behalf of IBEW our sincerest condolences to the family. I've got to take a minute because beyond IBEW and the brotherhood that David was so much a loved part of, I've known David since we were kids. We grew up together, both born and raised here in Palmer. Played basketball together. In fact, when we played basketball together, that was when I started to learn a little bit more about David and how incredibly competitive he was. In fact, if the referee called a foul on him, the referee was wrong. And there was no one that was going to convince David that he had fouled. In fact, there was usually a second foul right after that to show the blind referee exactly what a real foul looked like. So later, after high school, I started working for the Kincaid family, for Janet and Larry, as a cook in their restaurant at the hotel. Waiting 2.5 years to go to the Lineman Apprenticeship Program Training Center. David was also accepted into that, and we began another adventure together. We started our first year apprenticeship class together in the lineman trade. David and I looked at each other and said, we're going to show these people what Palmer boys are made of. And that's the attitude David had his whole life. He was first in the class. He was an overachiever. In about the first week, he gained the title from everyone in the room as Super Dave. He truly was Super Dave. When these people that just gave testimony about their experiences with him, if you know David, you knew that. He did not know the meaning of can't or failure. He'd achieve anything. Driven to do it. David and I cleared out on our first job together with Newberry Electric, brand new out of school. And the lineman took a look at us too and said, okay, we got some equipment to haul down at the dock. And since we'd walked into that yard, David had been salivating over this old Kenworth sitting in the corner of that yard. He loved trucks. And the journeyman said, is there anybody that can drive that truck down to the yard? David raises his hand. The journeyman looked at him and said, well, I'm not so sure he can do this. So David hit about 6 gears before he left the gate. Came back short order. And the journeyman told him, son, you love trucks. You know trucks. You are a truckie. In fact, I'm not sure that you're going to make it in this line trade because you belong with trucks. Well, that was another challenge for Dave. That was the first job. The journeyman told him, I don't think you're going to make it in this trade. And Dave went beyond making it in this trade. He was a very successful lineman. And I would say probably one of the finest journeyman linemen that IBEW NECA's apprenticeship program ever turned out. David was a friend. David was a brother. I remember him. And Rachel, on behalf of the IBEW and the officers and the members and the staff of the local, we want to present you and your family with this Bible in remembrance of Dave. Thank you.
Wow. I think we just need to stand for a minute. Can everybody stand and turn around one another and proclaim God is good for just a minute? Can you do that? God is good. All right, you may be seated.